Welcome back to Dance Plane, everybody. I'm Edward, and I'm so excited for our deep dive today. We're talking about something that's both fascinating and a little bit creepy. Sleep paralysis. You know that feeling of waking up and realizing you can't move, like maybe even sensing something in the room with you?
Yeah, it's definitely more than just a scary story. Sleep paralysis has a long, long history. And while it can feel like something out of a horror film, the science behind it is pretty amazing.
Okay, so let's start with that history. How far back are we talking here?
Well, you can find references to sleep paralysis all the way back in ancient Mesopotamia, around 2400 BCE.
Wow.
Back then, they thought it was caused by this demon called Lilu who would prey on people while they were sleeping.
Oh, wow. So from the very beginning, it was linked to something really sinister.
Absolutely. And this idea of something evil being present during sleep paralysis is a common thread throughout history and different cultures. In medieval Europe, there was this idea of the night-mare, literally a spirit that would sit on your chest and suffocate you.
That imagery must have been terrifying back then.
Oh, absolutely. And all these cultural interpretations really show us how people have always tried to explain these strange and scary experiences. It's not just the paralysis itself, it's also the hallucinations that often come with it.
Right. So it's like this universal experience, but different cultures have their own ways of making sense of it. What are some other examples of how people around the world interpret sleep paralysis?
Well, there's kanashibari in Japan, which basically means bound by metal. That really captures that feeling of being held down by something you can't see. And then you have the old hag in Newfoundland, which is like this evil spirit that sits on your chest.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting how these different explanations often reflect the fears or beliefs of each culture.
So we've got all these ancient interpretations, but when did people start to look at sleep paralysis from a more scientific perspective?
Well, things started to shift in the 19th century when researchers started making a connection between sleep paralysis and different stages of sleep, especially REM sleep.
Right, REM sleep. That's when we dream most vividly. And during REM sleep, our muscles are actually paralyzed. It's like a safety mechanism, so we don't act out our dreams.
Exactly. Sleep paralysis happens when someone wakes up, but that muscle paralysis hasn't worn off yet. So you're conscious, but your body can't move, and your brain, which is still kind of in that dreamlike state, can create some pretty wild and scary hallucinations.
So it's like our dream world is bleeding over into our waking reality. No wonder people in the past thought it was supernatural. But speaking of history, what about the Salem witch trials? I've heard there might be a connection to sleep paralysis there.
Yeah, there's a theory that sleep paralysis could have played a role in the Salem witch trials. Some of the accusers describe being pressed by these ghostly figures, which sounds a lot like a common sleep paralysis hallucination.
So you're saying it's possible these people were experiencing sleep paralysis, and because they didn't have any scientific explanation for it, they thought it was witchcraft.
It's a chilling thought, really. It shows just how a lack of understanding can lead to fear and even persecution.
Absolutely. Even today, knowing the science behind it, those hallucinations can still be really unsettling. But knowledge is power, right? The more we know about this stuff, the less we have to fear it. So let's dive into that science a bit more. Can you break down exactly what's happening in the brain during sleep paralysis?
Sure. The key is understanding what happens during REM sleep. During this stage, your brain is super active, almost as if you're awake.
Right.
That's when you have those crazy, vivid dreams. But to make sure you don't act those dreams out, your brain also basically paralyzes your muscles. It's a pretty amazing evolutionary trick.
So when you get sleep paralysis, it's like that safety switch is stuck, leaving you in this weird state between being asleep and awake.
You got it. And because your brain is still kind of in that dream mode, you can get these intense hallucinations. Some people feel a presence, others feel pressure on their chest, and some even see shadowy figures. It's a truly unique sensory experience.
That sounds terrifying, to be honest. I can't imagine how disorienting it would be to wake up like that. So how common is this, really? Are we talking rare, or is sleep paralysis more widespread than people think?
Research shows that around 8% of people will experience sleep paralysis at least once in their lives. But many people don't talk about it because they're afraid or embarrassed. So the real number could be much higher.
Wow. So it's not some fringe phenomenon then? Are there certain people who are more likely to experience it?
Yeah, definitely. We see it more often in students, probably because of all the stress and irregular sleep they have. And people with anxiety disorders seem to experience it more often too.
So managing stress and good sleep hygiene are important even if you haven't had sleep paralysis. What about specific things that can trigger an episode?
Well, not getting enough sleep is a huge one. Also, having a messed up sleep schedule, taking too many naps, and even sleeping on your back have been linked to a higher risk of sleep paralysis. And there's also a genetic component. So, if someone in your family has experienced it, you might be more likely to experience it too.
Okay, so there's a lot to consider. Knowing what might trigger it seems like the first step to dealing with sleep paralysis. But what about people who are already having these episodes? What can they do to make them less frequent or less intense?
Well, before we get into solutions, there's another really interesting aspect of sleep paralysis that I want to talk about, and that's its link to lucid dreaming.
Wait, you mean that thing where you know you're dreaming and you can control what happens in your dream? What does that have to do with sleep paralysis?
It might surprise you to learn that while most people find sleep paralysis really scary, some people actually say they can slip into a lucid dream during an episode.
Seriously? So instead of freaking out, they're suddenly in control of their dreams. How does that even work?
It's still a bit of a mystery, but one idea is that the heightened awareness you get during sleep paralysis can sort of kickstart that lucid dreaming state. It's like being caught between two worlds.
Uh-huh.
And for some, that space becomes a gateway to lucid dreaming.
That's amazing. So they're basically turning a terrifying experience into a superpower. Is there a way to make this happen on purpose, to go from sleep paralysis into a lucid dream?
Well, there are techniques people use to try and have lucid dreams, even without sleep paralysis, things like reality testing during the day and keeping a dream journal. But whether you can intentionally go from sleep paralysis to a lucid dream, that really depends on the person. We definitely need more research on this.
It does make you wonder if there's a way to train your mind to react differently to sleep paralysis. Instead of panicking, maybe you could learn to recognize what's happening and use it to jump into a lucid dream.
It's a fascinating idea, right? It kind of changes how we think about sleep paralysis. Maybe it's not just a nightmare, but a window into how powerful the human mind is. And maybe it's even a doorway to all sorts of possibilities within our dreams.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. Instead of fearing it, maybe we can see it as an opportunity to explore and discover something new about ourselves. But let's go back to those who are finding sleep paralysis really distressing. What practical advice can we give them?
Well, first things first, if you're having sleep paralysis regularly and it's messing with your life, you really need to talk to your doctor or a sleep specialist. They can make sure there isn't some other medical condition going on and suggest ways to deal with it.
So this isn't something you should just try to tough out on your own.
Absolutely not. There are treatments out there that can help. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, has been shown to work pretty well for managing the fear and anxiety that comes with sleep paralysis.
We talked a bit about medication earlier. Are there certain drugs that people use for sleep paralysis?
While there isn't a specific drug for sleep paralysis that's been approved by the FDA, some medications, like those used for depression or anxiety, can sometimes help if those underlying conditions are contributing to your sleep paralysis.
So the focus is on treating the root of the problem, not just the symptom. What about lifestyle changes? Can those make a difference?
Totally. Sticking to a regular sleep schedule, having a relaxing bedtime routine, avoiding things like caffeine and alcohol before bed, and making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool can all help you sleep better. And that can potentially reduce those sleep paralysis episodes.
So it's all about treating sleep as a really important part of our overall health, which it is. But we've covered a lot of ground here today. Let's recap the main points for our listeners. What are the most important things to remember about sleep paralysis?
Well, the biggest one is that it's a real thing, and it has a scientific explanation. It's not a sign that you're mentally ill, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Second, even though it can be really frightening, it's usually not dangerous, and it often goes away on its own. And last but not least, there are things you can do to manage it, from improving your sleep habits to getting help from a professional.
That's good to hear. But we're just getting started, folks. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dig deeper into the world of lucid dreaming and explore how we might actually use sleep paralysis for self-discovery.
Welcome back to Danceplane. As promised, we're going to delve into that fascinating link between sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming.
I'm ready. Last time, we talked about how some people use those scary sleep paralysis episodes to kind of jumpstart a lucid dream. It sounds almost unbelievable.
It might sound far-fetched, but there's actually a lot of research going on right now to understand this connection better. And while we can't say for sure that everyone can learn to do this, it's definitely something with a lot of potential for people who want to explore their dreams more deeply.
So for those who might not be familiar, can you remind us what lucid dreaming is all about?
Sure. Lucid dreaming is basically when you're aware that you're dreaming while you're having the dream. It's like waking up inside your own dream. And once you have that awareness, you can sometimes control things like the story of the dream, the setting, even the characters.
So it's like becoming the director of your own mental movie.
Exactly. You go from being a passive viewer to actively shaping what's happening in your dream. Some people use it for creative problem solving, others to face their fears, and some just for the pure fun of exploring these amazing dream worlds.
That's so cool. But how does sleep paralysis fit into all of this?
Well, think about it. One of the main things about sleep paralysis is this heightened sense of awareness.
Right.
You know you're awake, but you can't move. And for some people, that intense awareness seems to be what triggers them to become lucid in their dream. It's like they become aware of the paralysis and then realize, hey, wait a minute, I must be dreaming.
Oh, that's interesting. So they're basically using the fear and confusion of sleep paralysis as a signal to become lucid. But can you learn to do that intentionally? To have that awareness on purpose? Or does it just happen randomly?
There are definitely techniques that people use to try and induce lucid dreaming even without having sleep paralysis. One popular method is called reality testing.
Okay.
This is where you get into the habit of questioning whether you're dreaming throughout the day. So you might ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? Several times during the day. And then you do a reality check, like try to push your finger through the palm of your hand. If you're dreaming, your finger would probably just go right through.
Ah, that's a good one.
So you're basically training your mind to question its own reality, and that can carry over into your dreams.
I see. You're making it more likely that you'll ask that same question, am I dreaming, when you're actually asleep.
Yeah, exactly. And another helpful practice is keeping a dream journal. By writing down your dreams as soon as you wake up, you start to notice patterns and symbols that pop up in your dreams, which can help you recognize when you're dreaming.
So it's about being more mindful, both in your waking life and when you're dreaming. But let's say someone is experiencing sleep paralysis and they want to try using it to have a lucid dream. What would you suggest?
Well, the first thing to remember is that this isn't going to work for everybody. But if you're curious to try it out, one approach is to just try and relax into the experience instead of fighting it.
Okay.
Remember, sleep paralysis itself isn't dangerous. It's the fear and panic that makes it feel so awful.
So instead of resisting it, try to go with the flow of the sensations. That's kind of counterintuitive given how scary it can feel.
It might seem that way, but a lot of times the more you fight against something, the stronger it gets. If you can find a way to just accept those feelings of paralysis and even the hallucinations, you might have an easier time shifting your awareness into a dream state.
What are some techniques that people can actually use during a sleep paralysis episode to make it more likely they'll have a lucid dream?
One technique is to focus your mind on a specific image or intention. Like you might imagine yourself floating up out of your body or flying through the air. By really concentrating on that image, you might be able to shift into a dream where you're actually doing those things.
So you're using visualization to guide your awareness into a dream. That's interesting.
Exactly. And another technique is to try and change the dream environment itself. Like if you see a door in your sleep paralysis hallucination, try to imagine yourself walking through that door. Or if you feel like there's something in the room with you, try to interact with it in a curious way instead of being afraid.
That takes a lot of guts, I bet. It's not easy to be playful when you're feeling terrified.
Yeah, it definitely takes practice, and it might not work every time. The important thing is to try things out and see what works for you. Remember, lucid dreaming is a skill, and just like any skill, it takes time and patience to get good at it.
It's amazing to think that something as scary as sleep paralysis could actually be a portal to this whole other world of dream exploration. It's like turning a nightmare into something positive.
It's a great way to look at it. We're still in the early stages of figuring out the science behind this, but it definitely opens up some really interesting possibilities for how we approach both sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming.
It makes you wonder what other secrets our brains are hiding from us. We've covered a lot in this episode, from ancient ideas about sleep paralysis to the potential for using it to have lucid dreams. It's been a really eye-opening journey.
And for anyone out there who might be dealing with sleep paralysis, remember that you're not alone. It's a pretty common experience, and there are ways to manage it. And who knows, maybe you can even use it to learn more about yourself.
Well said. But before we move on, I want to talk about one more thing. We've discussed how to cope with sleep paralysis and even maybe use it to our advantage. But what about preventing it altogether? Is there anything people can do to make it less likely they'll experience it in the first place?
That's a great question. And honestly, it all comes back to having good sleep hygiene. It seems simple, but a lot of people don't prioritize it.
So what are some specific things that people can do to improve their sleep hygiene and possibly lower their risk of having sleep paralysis?
Consistency is key. Try to go to bed and wake up around the same time every day, even on weekends. And try to get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep each night. Having a relaxing routine before bed can also make a big difference, like taking a warm bath, reading a book, listening to some calming music. The goal is to tell your body that it's time to wind down.
So it's about setting the stage for good sleep. What about the actual sleep environment? Any tips there?
Definitely. You want your bedroom to be dark, quiet, and cool. If you're sensitive to light or noise, invest in some blackout curtains, a white noise machine, or even earplugs. And most experts recommend keeping your bedroom around 65 degrees Fahrenheit for the best sleep.
That makes sense. And we've touched on this before, but it's worth saying again. Avoid caffeine and alcohol before bed.
Absolutely. Caffeine can stay in your system for a long time and make it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. And while alcohol might make you feel sleepy at first, it actually messes with your sleep cycles later in the night, which means you won't sleep as well overall.
So it's about making smart choices throughout the day that will help you sleep better at night. And if someone's still having sleep paralysis even after making these changes, they should definitely talk to their doctor.
Exactly. There might be something else going on that needs to be addressed.
Right. Don't suffer in silence. There are ways to get help.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Sleep paralysis is a really interesting and complex topic,
It is.
and we've only just scratched the surface. But hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners a better grasp of what sleep paralysis is, why it happens, and how to deal with it.
And who knows, maybe some of you listening will even be inspired to explore the world of lucid dreaming after learning a bit about sleep paralysis. It might just be the key to unlocking a whole new level of awareness. That's a cool thought. But for now, we'll leave you to think about everything we've discussed. Make sure to join us next time as we wrap up our sleep paralysis deep dive with a look at the latest research and what the future might hold for how we understand this mysterious phenomenon. Welcome back to Dansplain. It's been quite a ride exploring sleep paralysis, from those ancient interpretations to its possible connection to lucid dreaming.
Yeah, it really has. Unpacking all that history, the science, the personal experiences, it's been fascinating. And I think in this last part, we should touch on where the research on sleep paralysis is headed and what the future might hold for understanding this really weird experience.
I'm ready. What are some of those interesting things happening in sleep paralysis research right now?
Well, one area that's getting a lot of attention is looking at what's actually happening in the brain during sleep paralysis. Researchers are using brain imaging, like fMRI, to see exactly which parts of the brain are active during these episodes. This could give us some real insights into how sleep paralysis works and maybe lead to more effective treatments down the road.
So, by figuring out what's going on in the brain, we might be able to develop better ways to help people who are struggling with sleep paralysis. What else is coming down the pike?
Another really cool area of research is looking at the role of genetics in sleep paralysis.
Okay.
Scientists are trying to pinpoint specific genes that might make someone more likely to experience sleep paralysis. This could eventually lead to personalized treatments, treatments that are tailored to your specific genetic makeup.
Wow, so it's like we're moving towards a more personalized approach to sleep health in general, which is pretty exciting.
Exactly. And you know what else is really interesting?
What's that?
People are working on developing apps and wearable tech that can actually detect and maybe even stop sleep paralysis episodes as they're happening. Imagine having a device that could tell when you're about to have sleep paralysis and then gently nudge you out of it before you even start to feel scared or see those hallucinations.
That sounds almost like science fiction, but it makes sense. Technology is becoming more and more important in how we study and treat sleep problems.
Definitely. And while there are still some hurdles to overcome, this kind of tech could be a game changer for people who deal with sleep paralysis in the future.
It's incredible to think about how much we've learned about this thing. We've gone from blaming it on demons to studying the brain and developing cutting-edge technology to tackle it.
It really shows the power of human curiosity. And who knows what we'll discover next as we keep digging deeper into sleep paralysis.
I can't wait to find out. But before we wrap up this whole deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a few key points to take away. What are the most important things you want people to remember about sleep paralysis?
Well, the first thing is to remember that even though it's scary, sleep paralysis is a normal experience. And it's usually not dangerous. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Secondly, understanding the science behind it can really help take away the fear and give you the power to do something about it. And finally, don't be afraid to reach out for professional help if you need it. You don't have to go through this alone.
That's so important. And remember, folks, knowledge is power. The more we understand about sleep paralysis, the less we have to fear it. And who knows, maybe it can even be a stepping stone to exploring the amazing world of lucid dreaming.
Exactly. So if you're curious to learn more about sleep paralysis or anything else that piques your interest, be sure to check out our website, www.dansplain.xyz, for all the latest episodes, articles, products, and more.
We've got a whole world of knowledge waiting for you. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and sleep tight.